Well, hello again. Today is I think it's the 2nd of May, start of a new week, and I still haven't got my rotors. Have been, notified by Max Thunderbird that they're in, but they said it would be the first week, so we have until Friday or Saturday. I'll call on Saturday or Friday afternoon if I haven't heard a word. But anyway, let's start this video right here with this thing that appears to be a ballast resistor. Now, that's not really a ballast resistor, believe it or not. It looks like one. That is a fusible link. That wire that loops around there is a fuse. Fusible link. The old radios that we used to work on had really tiny ones, but they were flexible. Here's the fusible link right here. Here's the jumper wire that goes between it, and it runs over into the alternator, or the starter here rather. And then it comes on down and it runs into the alternator here also. So I went on the, now we're having a little problem with this right here, I'll show you that in a minute. I went back to the Vintage Thunderbird Club International forum and reread some more stuff on there. And one guy said, this has been a problem apparently for a long time. My question is, what is the amperage rating of this? And I looked around and one guy said that it is, I'd replace it with a 30 amp if he wanted to replace this fusible flexible resistor, replace it with a 30 amp. But if you look down here on the schematic, it says that it's this is the charging circuit and power circuit for a 42, 45, and 55 amp setup. So I don't know if 30 amps is going to do that or not. That would blow awfully quick, it would seem to me. And I'm going to have to take this apart and clean it up because it's really rusty and mangy. But this is just a mount with a couple of screws. You don't even need a mount if you didn't want to do it, but you have to have this fuse. We are hooked up there, and we are hooked up across our two multimeter leads. Let's see what we get. Well, right now we're on the 200 ohm scale. We're not getting much, are we? Get this stupid light out of my way. Let's go down the range. Oh, up the range, I guess I should say. Well, this is not good. What a revolting development. Well, I decided to go ahead and remove the block, which came off the inner fender well real easy. But I took the top one off, no problem again. But when I got to the bottom one, these are two different, for some reason, these are two different size bolts in there. There's or two different size nuts anyway. Looks like two different size bolts altogether. Smaller one at the top. I don't know the difference between that. I can't figure that one out. Anyway, this one here, of course, is going round and round. How could I expect anything less? Anyway, I've got a vise on the back. I'm going to try everything I can. It just goes round and round, and I'm really curious to see what's underneath this. Has this been replaced before? I don't know. But I'm going to try to hang on to it with this pair of vice grips and screw it back down in. Wire brush it some more, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and try to work it off a quarter of a thread at a time if necessary, or less, as long as it's coming off. Nothing is working to get that thing off of there. It was really rusted, and as you can see, it's got flat sides all the way around. So the way I see this is the only option I have to get it off is it's flared on the bottom down there. So they just hit it twice, or the machine did when it was put in. I can knock off that flare all the way around and then drive it back up through this way. Hopefully get the nut off after I put it in the vise, and then put it all back down in there with glue, good JB Weld, stuff like that. But let's go ahead and test. I've cleaned the terminals really good, or best I can anyway. And let's go ahead and hook up our meter to it again, see what we get. Probably nothing, but it's, after it's clean, you'd be surprised. There again, the old radio repair stuff always comes in handy because I've had this situation many times in an old radio where it didn't read any resistance, and then you clean the contacts or change the solder, and bingo, you're right back in business again. So let's find out. Nope, still nothing. I don't want to give up on this. I want to make sure before I go messing around looking for this and looking for that. Oh my goodness. Well, look at here. See? That's what I was telling you. Good old radio repair comes in handy. Well, this time I shot it with a little bit of QD electronic cleaner as well. Alright. Listen to that weird. 0.5? Half an ohm? I don't like this. Well, we're getting all kind of erratic readings now. It's going all over the place. It's going all the way up to, I think it was 25 ohms and back down again. If I bend this thing here was bent at such an angle that it's probably damaged down in here. Every time I see it, even this has been broken. It's been broken. It's been bent too far, probably from the battery hitting it all the time. And no matter what I do, if I bend this, you'll see we'll get different readings here. Yeah, see? We finally got her off, so all we have now is a couple of wires that still need to be cleaned a little bit. You'll notice that the one on the top, it is a lot smaller as far as the size and the hole goes than the one right here. And like I said, all I had to do was grind off that flared out area over here with my moto tool. Just knocked it off and it punched right on out. And it'll be a piece of cake going back in because it's got 6 flat sides. I'll just load it up with epoxy. I have some metal impregnated epoxy we can mix up and stick it down in there and let it harden up. It'll be just as secure as this thing right here. I got lucky on eBay the other day. I've been looking for a set of these shock tower to firewall braces that go underneath the hood, underneath, you know, in the engine compartment. The one that came with our car missing when they put the engine back in. They just probably never bothered to put it back, or they damaged them, or they were already damaged, or who knows what. Anyway, if you buy a set of these, or one of them, if you just buy one of these on eBay that has been derusted and cleaned and painted and it looks pretty good like new, they're asking $60 for those. Well, I'm not going to pay $60 for one of these. I don't care if they're gold plated, for crying out loud. So I kept looking. A couple of folks over the time I've been working on the car said they might have some from their car or an old car they had, but they never got back to me, so apparently they didn't have them, and or they couldn't find them or whatever. So I got lucky the other day. There's a fellow up in Rhode Island. He sold both of these to me. And he said they were on eBay. He said they need to be, they're structurally sound. They just need to be derusted, and they'll be fine. And they came in $10 for both. Heck of a deal, I thought. Another way I kept from having to spend a few bucks that I didn't want to spend was this that rubber stop that fits right there, that bangs up against the throttle stop plate that was sent to me by Bill. Let me get in a better position here. That's a square hole, as you can see. And I took it out. I took what was left of it out. It was all flattened out, if you remember. And I was able to separate the bolt with the square head on it, with the square slot post underneath it that fits in that square slot. And I got to thinking, I said, I have a whole bunch of these rubber leg type stops. I could probably, I think this is about the right thickness of one that they sell on Max Thunderbird. Max wants $2.99 for one of these plus $10 shipping. Which of course again is not going to fly. I just cannot do that. I just won't. So I'm thinking that I can, even if I have to like grind down the outside edge of this thing a little bit to where it'll fit inside this hole, I can go ahead and cut this thing off here, run this thing all the way through, and maybe as an extra support, put this plate up there on the very back side that'll give it a little more support. I don't know exactly how we'll do that, but this thing here, I'm almost certain I can get to fit down through there, and we'll see what happens. As hoped, I was able to grind the outside edge down a little bit and force that baby right down in there. She's nice and tight. She won't come out. Now all I have to do is slip her in this hole right here. And I think that's going to work real good as a stop. It's going to be about the right height I need. As far as I'm concerned, I just saved $13 plus tax. $10 for shipping, $3 for the rubber cushion, and tax. Good deal. However, having showed this thing on the video, Nick from over in Vintage Thunderbird Repair. You guys that have an interest in Thunderbirds, or you own Thunderbirds, or you plan to get a Thunderbird, if you haven't been over to, I'm talking the 61 all the way through 66, I think. He may go beyond that, I don't know. But he contacted me, he said, John, this thing here is crooked. He noticed it in the video. Well, I thought it was maybe supposed to be that way. I wasn't sure. But he said, no, this thing here has got to be perfectly straight. Well, isn't that wonderful? I appreciate you telling me that, Nick. I wasn't sure, you know, and I said, well, I don't know, maybe it's bent so perfectly, you know. I said, maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, they do make production changes on these cars from time to time. And, you know, I don't want to be messing something up, because now that I have to bend this thing back, you know, you bend this thing backwards, you automatically have weakened the metal a little bit. So you got to be careful. And it could be that after a while it'll bend right back to where it was. If that's the case, if it bends back to where it was after a period of time, I will take I have a welder. Yes, I do. I'll take a strip of metal and I will weld it to the inside. Let me get this around here. I'll just weld it right there on the inside, just straight down. I'll just, you know, get the paint off this baby, and I'll just, little piece of band metal of some kind, I'll just weld it straight down so she won't bend, and it won't affect any of the operation of the throttle linkage. Can't do it on the rear because that has to go against the firewall. But anyway, that's my next step, is trying to figure out how to get that thing straightened out. I guess I'll put it in a vise and put a rag around it, and who knows, maybe I'll just use my brute strength. One other thing, our what they call fusible link, which is nothing more than a 10 gauge wire 7 inches long, that's all. It'll burn out before the rest of the wiring does. Cheap way of making a fuse, huh? That's all it is. It's just a fuse, you know. And this plastic block, now there's no big deal on this plastic box. I could have used this block. I could have used a piece of wood, but this bolt here, after I got it out, I went ahead and JB welded it up all back in all the way around. The thing on this bolt is you have to be careful. Let me get a pencil here. You have to be careful around these teeth at the bottom. Let me zoom in here. These teeth are serrated like that, so it grips this. It grips these right here. Okay, you want it to make good. You want it to bite into the metal and make good contact. Remember, this is a fuse. This is a safety thing. If you don't get good contact, and the wiring could burn up before the fuse does. I don't know. But anyway, go ahead, and this is going to have to be cleaned out a little bit more. This I cleaned out when I had to bolt out. It's kind of tough getting this out. I'll figure out something. I think I might just put a little bit of that navel jelly around there, let it soak for a while, and then wash it off. That'll help. Just don't get it. If you ever have the situation where this thing has to come out, I mean, you have to, you know, it just winds up spinning around and around and around. You have no choice but to drive it out and then to glue it back in. Just make sure you don't get any glue up on top of these teeth. That's all. Other than that, it's just a piece of plastic. It's already been broken years ago, as you can see right here. Kind of strange that it would be broken. I don't know why. But anyway, we're going to clean it up a little bit more. But this turned out real well. These things shined up good. Everything's cool. By the way, I don't know how many of you guys are UFC fight fans. I love boxing. I love UFC. I love kickboxing, sumo wrestling, all that stuff. It's just always been a big attraction to me. I don't know why. But our good old homegrown fighter from Cabot, Arkansas here, Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell, he went up against Charles Rosa. And our grandson, you know, our youngest grandson, John, you know, he trains with Thug Nasty down in Little Rock. And we were talking about the fight, you know, all the bouts actually, but Bryce's fight with Charles Rosa was our big interest. Well, right after the fight, you know, John calls me up and he says, "Man, did you see that?" I said, "Yeah, man." I said, "I can't believe it." I said, no matter what Rosa did, Bryce Mitchell he had an answer for him. He was on top of him. You know, Rosa couldn't do anything. And I said, it was unbelievable. And John says, "I know. He does that to me every week. Now the other half of this fusible link setup, you know, the wires that are on the car, I went ahead and cleaned those also, and those are nice and shiny, ready to go. I did that strictly with a small wire brush, you know, my little toothbrush wire brush. Just give it a good scrubbing and a good cleaning, and it should be good to go. We're going to go ahead and clean all this with some cleaner, spray cleaner and a rag before we put it back together. By the way, while we're here, I might as well let you see what we got down here. This battery tray is going to have to come out. Look what we got down here behind it. My goodness sakes, that's what a mess that's going to be. That's just totally rusted out. But I don't know what I'm going to find when I get that box out of there, but you can bet it's not going to be pretty. In order to straighten this bell crank up, the back plate, I could have just taken a hammer, you know, and beat on it. I don't want to do that. That would be an absolute last resort. So I went ahead and stuck it in the vise, you know, with the pointed area. The part that has the bolt holes in it is down, making it as level as possible because I have to bend this thing evenly. And I could just go ahead and take a pair of vice grips now and put on it and bend one side and then come back and bend the other. Not cool either. We're going to do it that way, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. I know that doesn't make much sense, but first thing we're going to do is we're going to double up on a rag and put it down in there. And then we're going to take two vice grips side by side. Mount one in here and one in here. We're going to bend them together. Let me set that up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Just like that. Okay, now I didn't clamp them to the point where I went through the rag and tore up the paint. You know, and all. They're tight, but they're not super tight. Okay, I'm not trying to, you know, damage it any worse than it already is, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So what I'll do now is I'll put one hand on this one and the other hand on this one, and I'll slowly bend them forward. I found out that by moving these two together, I can hold the vise with one hand down here because the table was moving, and just use one hand holding them both to bend it. That works a whole lot better. Yeah, she's not quite there. I got to go just a little bit more. Well, she's looking kind of straight, but I think I better go a little bit more. Well, I think that's pretty darn close. Check that out. Nice and flat on the back, along the side, and over here. We got about as close as we're going to get on that baby. So I think what we can do now, I mean, it's not brand new, but we did it without tearing up the paint or anything. So, you know, small favors, as they say. I think what we can do now is go ahead and put our bumper in there. Well, as you can see, today is the 16th of May, and we still have no rotors. We're not going to be getting rotors from Max Thunderbird. I went on the website the other day to see what the status, maybe I could find the status, and all of a sudden the rotors say temporarily discontinued. What do you mean temporarily discontinued? They've been telling me for 3 weeks they'd be sending them to me to, you know, as soon as they come in. So I called them up. Well, what's all this about? Well, we just can't give you an estimated time of arrival. I said, well, okay, I'll tell you what. Cancel the order. So the rotors have been canceled. Tired of messing with that crap. You know, you would have thought they would have notified the customers who were on the list for the rotors. They could have sent them an email and said, hey, look, you know, here's the situation. You know, we can't get them or whatever. There's going to be an extended delay. You have the option of canceling and whatever, you know, or just hanging with us. Not a word from them, not a sound. That, you know, that is bad business practice as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, I went here, there, and everywhere looking for rotors for a 66 Thunderbird, and they're just not available. Everybody's out of stock. You know, well, what's going on? Is this coronavirus thing made everybody do a run on toilet paper and 66 Thunderbird disc brake rotors? I called up this one place, you know, it was called the R1 Accent, I think is the name of it. I called them up. They had a nice display of rotors on their website. And this guy answers with an India accent, from India. And right away I'm like, wait a minute, what is this guy doing on this website that deals with rotors for classic cars and things? So I said to him, I said, where are you located? Are you guys located in California? Yes, we're located in California. I said, are you in California? Yes. I said, no, I'm talking about you. Are you located in California? He tells me yes. Yeah, right. So I went ahead and I played along with him for a little while. Talked to him about the rotors, and he said, what do you want them for? I said, a Thunderbird. And he's a 66 Thunderbird, and he said, who makes the Thunderbird? I said, you know something? You don't know who makes the Thunderbird. I'll see you later. Goodbye. I hung up. I mean, I don't want to deal with somebody who doesn't even know who makes a Thunderbird. You know, for all I know, that's a bogus outfit run by a bunch of scam artists over there in India. You know, I place my order, send my money, or give them my money, and then I never hear from them again. You know, that's not going to happen. Not going to happen. So, I got together with Brendan, my mentor in many ways, as I said, and he recommended a couple other places. I checked those other places, and sure enough, you know, same thing, out of stock. Summit Racing. Yeah, we got them. I'm going to go all the way through. I get to the point where it's checkout to pay for it, and it says, oh, we're out of stock. You know, we'll notify you when they come in. Wrong answer. I backed out again. This has been a marathon trying to come up with rotors. Anyway, I finally found some at a place called Brake Performance. The lady that answered the phone spoke English, which was fantastic to me, clear and concise. She said, yes, we have them. We grind, we machine and work the rotors over right here in Southern California. I said, that's fantastic. I bought them. They'll be coming in. We'll cover that in the next video, unless they come in the next few days. She said it takes 3-4 days to get them properly machined, you know, and all. I said, that's no problem, you know. So that's where we stand on the rotors. Meanwhile, we're still doing little tiny little things on the engine here, there, and everywhere. So what's in this box will be next. Let me show you. This is kind of interesting. When water runs down the windshield of the Thunderbird, it of course goes into the cowl here. This is called the cowl, and the water has to get out of there somehow. You know, when it rains and runs down the windshield, whatever. Well, there are drains on both sides of the cowl, but you can't see them because they're underneath the hood. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. You know, some of you Thunderbird owners may have missed this. I almost did. Get my light squared away here. Come on, you. Ah, God. Anyway, down here on the very right hand side, look at that thing right there. See it? That is the drain line for the cowl. You have one exactly like it on the other side. Right there, the other side of that, the hinge, way over there. So let me show you what, there is a band with an adjustment screw on it that has to come off. And then I'll show you what used to be on there is gone, of course, and we're going to have to replace it. Now all of this is caulking and undercoating and a bunch of other crap that's piled up over the years. I may have to wind up just taking it off. See, it comes right off in your hand. The junk buildup of caulking and whatnot. So after I clean this all up, I'll know more about it. But what goes on there is in this box. So let me back up. And they look like, it's kind of a funny shape. They look like little boxing gloves, I thought. But there we are. This part here slips over that deal down there. I'll get a little clarity here for you. Now this here will slip over there, and the clamp goes around it, and the water runs out here. And it runs down this way, down the firewall area and onto the ground. So that's what I need to put on next. I'm going to go ahead and, let me go ahead and clean the first one up and see what it looks like. Well, the old rain just won't stop. Look at that yard. Look how high it is. I don't think I'm ever going to get it mowed if it doesn't quit. Got to shut the door. It's getting wet in here. Alright, that looks a whole lot better than it did. I got it pretty well clean. I flaked off all that loose, you know, stripping, caulking, whatever it was. I took a toothbrush size steel. If you don't have any of these in brass and steel, you know, next time you're at Walmart or auto parts store or online, pick yourself up some. These things come in handy so often. I just gave it a good scrubbing, you know, all around the bottom. I was able to get my hand around the bottom down there and scrub it. And then I took a cleaner and a rag and gave it a good wipe down. But, you know, the reason they had all this caulking and crap around here, this is not undercoating, this was actually caulking. they caulked it in. Right here you can see this thing goes all the way into the passenger compartment, and that's no good. That's got to be sealed up. So I have some, what you can do is you can take some regular caulking and just fill that in all the way around, down around the bottom. You'll have messy hands when you're done. I always like to do that sort of thing without a glove on, so I can really feel what I have. Or you can use something else that I happen to have lying around, and it is a tube of black roofing cement. And I can put that in my caulking gun. This is asphalt sealant. It'll dry up, does the same thing as regular caulk, and I think it'll work a lot better than just general caulk. So let's see what I can do with that. I'm going to have to caulk it, let it dry, and then go ahead and put that rubber boot on, that drain boot. One other thing before I start doing that though, these metal clamps, this is what's left of the old boot. Well, they really deteriorated over the years, didn't they? Nothing left at all. I'll clean that all up and I'll probably soak it in vinegar a little bit or something. But these metal clamps, if yours are like deteriorated, rusted away, and no good, you can buy them. They on Max Thunderbird, they do sell them. Exactly this shape. And they're not very expensive either. Alright, it is time to check our shock tower braces. See how they're doing. They've been soaking for days because I've been in there working on the living room floor. And ooh, doesn't that look good, huh? Yum yum. Alright, let's see what we've got here. Shake them around a little bit. I came out the other day and took off the bolt things. They go through the holes on that end up there that the bolts go through. And well, it's not looking too bad. No rust anyway. Let's see what the other one looks like. Alright, no rust there either. All I have to do now is wire brush them up and clean them off and get them out of there. Well, the rain finally quit, so I was able to open the door. We get a little more light in here. Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and pile this stuff on and smooth it all out. I'm just going to spit it down there. Eventually I'll get to the point where I'll have to put it on my finger or some kind of a deal. And I'm just going to smooth it all out, make it look the best we can. You saw how much was on there originally. It was quite a bit. Alright, that's done. What I'll do now is just let it set for 24 hours. See if I can't come out and tamp it down a little bit more. Right now, every time I tamp it, it just smears around. So I want it to harden up a little bit. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. Well, time to close the door again. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and get this block back on and get our little fusible link in there, or a piece of wire is all it is. But first, I've been spraying this right here. I'm going to clean this up a little bit where it goes. Let it sit for a few seconds and give it a good wipe down. Alright, I think we can open the door again. Yeah, stopped. It's weird, huh? You know, working on cars can sometimes get very frustrating. Little events that occur that just drive you nuts, and this is one of them. I was getting ready to put that block in, and the nut that goes to the smaller bolt stud here, it fell out of my hand, bounced away, and you think I can find that thing anywhere? I have hunted high and low and high and low. But you know, it's the old story, when you have lemons, make lemon juice. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have to make a trip downtown, to find a nut to fit that. So while we're there, I might as well pick up some of these new bolts, because these aren't really in the best of shape, especially up around the bottom of the head there. This one here is pretty worn. See that one spot where it's kind of messed up? We're going to get, those holes have been reamed out over the years quite a bit, the top and bottom one there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hammer and kind of tap them down a little bit. I'm going to get a couple of these a little larger in diameter. So we'll have some nice new stuff to put back there. Well, they're not looking too bad, are they? You got a little flash rust that developed on them. So what we're going to do with that, of course, is get out the old trusty rust treatment by Permatex. I use this a lot now. And just go ahead and spray them both down. Now you have to let this thing set for 24 hours. Now the way I like it, the way the instructions are written on the can, I'll give you a little tip on this stuff for anybody who is contemplating using it. It says, if you want to put it on more than one coat, wait 2 minutes, no more than 2 minutes, and then spray it. Well, I got news for him. You know, I've waited overnight and sprayed it the next day and let it set for an additional 24 hours, and it really turned it black and got rid of the rust. So, you know, I'm not sure where they come up with this 2-minute business. But one thing you don't want to do, you don't want to put any spray paint on it, any primer or anything until it's had 24 hours to dry, which makes it really black. It'll really blacken up the rust and help you a lot. But I like them so far. Not bad for $10, huh? Well, the old sky has flat opened up. Oh, this is the same day, by the way. This is horrible. I don't know if it's going to stop or not. We've had a couple of tornado warnings already. Oh well. It'll soon be dry and hot and humid and miserable. Before we go any further, let's take a look at our good buddy Connor, 16 years old, from down in Texas. He was the grand prize winner of the dice that hangs on the mirror of the old cars back in the late 50s and early 60s. And it was shipped to him. He's received it. Here's the photograph of him holding it. He said he can't wait to get it on the mirror. He thinks it's going to look really cool on his 63 Ford Falcon. And he said he would send me a second photograph of the dice hanging from the mirror. I have yet to see it. Come on, Connor. Get off dead center, son. By the way, I want to go over one or two things that were sent to me before I shut the video down. Were sent to me by our good friend Nick over at Vintage Thunderbird Repair. He wrote me a whole bunch of things, and there's a couple in there that I thought maybe if you haven't read it or seen it, I'll go ahead and go over a couple of them. Well, Nick, mentioned something that I already knew, but we'll be taking care of it at a later date. I can't do it right away. I've got too many other things to mess with. I want to get this car running and get it out of the garage, so I can get an electrician in here to a couple of those boys and have them wire the garage, and then we can pull it back in. Then we can play around with our vacuum lines and everything that are rotten. And he's right; they're all messed up. But he said this grommet right here, where three of these things go through. He said Metro Molding Incorporated has those, and he couldn't provide me with the part number. Anyway, I went to Metro Molding rubber. It's Metro Molding Inc. Anyway, I'll put on the screen the correct name of it. I looked all over, Nick. They don't have those anymore. I don't know if they sell them or they stopped selling them or they're special order. Couldn't find one. I hunted high and low. You can search by type of car. I searched by the 1966 Thunderbird, and it came up zip. So I don't know what to tell you on that. I don't know what we're going to do on that either. Might be able to come up with a universal kind. I can drill my own holes. I have no idea. We'll worry about that at a later date. But I appreciate you mentioning that. Well, it was time finally for Murphy to strike, and he did strike. And fortunately, it was something small, but at the same time, it was something critical. I went to Lowe's to get some a nut for this thing right here, and a couple of lock washers, and a few other things I needed. And while I was fumbling around with this thing, it fell out of my hand, and it hit the cement floor, and it broke. I couldn't believe it. You know, I've been very careful with this thing. It's delicate. I knew it was brittle from age, and it broke. It doesn't look broke, but it is. There, it broke the ear right off of it. Can you believe that? Well, this thing flew off. I had no idea where it went. One of the other customers helped me find it. You know, the whole thing was just a miserable experience. Well, fortunately, it was a nice clean break. No pieces and parts, and all I have to do is take some JB Weld. It's kind of funny because the guy that found it for me says, well, I guess all you got left is JB Weld. And I said, yeah, how about that? And he wanted to know what it was, and I told him it was from a Thunderbird. But anyway, see, nice clean break. There's no little pieces missing, you know, where it's shattered into 1,000. So all I'm going to do, I mean, what else can you do? That's nice and rough there, so the JB Weld will do a good job of gluing it together. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bunch of glue there and put a bunch of glue there. And I'm not, you know, you don't want to be squeezing it down to where all the glue squeezes out, because that eliminates the whole idea of gluing it. I'm just going to let its own weight hold it down there overnight. I'm not going to use the JB Quick now on this. I'm going to use the original JB Weld. And, you know, I've been real careful with it. I didn't want to overly clean or overly, scrub it with wire brush or anything. And I don't know. We'll just see what happens. I may wind up taping this part off now and then spraying this with black. Probably not. I'll probably just leave it like it is. That just irritates you, doesn't it? Yep. Now another thing that Nick mentioned were these two clamps that hold the wire bundle on that, you know, runs up the back of the engine there. One is attached to the bell housing. A bolt goes through it, which would be this large one, and the other one is attached to the valve cover bolt up in the right hand corner there. He said one of these, this one here, looks like it might be actually not for the wire bundle, but for the surge tank overflow tube. It attaches to a bolt on the water pump, and he said they're very rare. He said there's only one on the engine. He said, and they're spring steel, very tough. He said, whereas these are easily bendable. Well, these are easily bendable, so these are for the wire. Now let me show you the bolt he was talking about, I believe, and the surge tank overflow. Here's your surge tank right here, and here's your overflow right there. This is the rubber hose. Now right now I've got the way they had this thing, and the way I put it back was they had it going down through right there. But George H. up in Michigan, by the way, George, you know, your wifey even knows you're George H. Well, maybe you need to take a look at your birth certificate, son. Because you have always been George H., not George B. Oh, maybe you need to get wifey on your case there. Anyway, I think he said he run his down this way. And this one has been run this way. And the bolt that Nick was talking about is that one right there, I believe, where it sticks out, and it either sticks out that way or that way. I'm not really certain. But for now, I'm going to leave this right where it's at. But it's missing off of there, you know, when they put the engine back together. They didn't worry about stuff like that. Come on, Nick. Well, that'll take care of it. I went ahead and put a big old gob around on the backside also. Really gobbed it up good. You know, there's heat down in that engine, and JB Weld's not affected that much, but I don't want to take any chances. This thing is really brittle. I mean, it's light as a feather, but yet when I hit the floor, it popped that right off of there, so that shows you how brittle it is. All right, we'll just let it sit here for 24 hours. Anyway, let's go ahead and wrap it up with that. We'll end the video here. It's too long anyway. I don't like watching very long videos. I get bored after a while, you know. Anyway, I was going to go ahead and put the throttle plate on today. I said that in the last video. We couldn't get to it because when I got to Lowe's, they did not have the lock washers for these bolts that go, you know, the bell housing. And I'm not putting this thing on without lock washers. I don't know why they all do that, you know. You got to have lock washers unless it's against you know, aluminum. Then you want to have a flat washer. Then you can do your lock washer. You don't want the lock washer digging into the aluminum. But we're gonna have this thing locked on tight with a lock washer. I need to take out the second bolt. But Lowe's didn't have a lock washer to fit that bolt. Can you believe that? Anyway, let's go ahead and wrap it up here. I don't think there's anything else I need to mention. If there is, I'll add it on to the end of the video. Until next time, this is John.